My people, got something to tell you. Repetition deepens impression. You want something deeply impressed in your life, you gotta repeat, you gotta repeat, you gotta repeat.
This is something that we're not only telling you guys, but today's episode is all about this theme of going deeper in the Bible by continuing to come back to it over and over. Today's episode is all about this, how you can have deeper insight through repetition.
Here we go.
Today's episode is brought to you by Logos. Learn more about the world's best Bible study software at logos.com/themove. Today's episode is John chapter 5, verse 1 through 17.
And the question is, have you read it? If you haven't, it's in the description below. Take a little bit of time, read it, and we'll give you 3 seconds. We'll put 10 minutes on the clock, and we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
Here we go.
John chapter 5. Can we tell the folks
behind the scenes, or do we just pretend like we got it all together all the time?
Yeah, let's pretend like we just always do these in one takes, and that we're never like, what is the Bible saying?
It is totally not true. That this is the third take, and actually the third day of trying to shoot these.
No.
Second day. We sat down.
Which is very Johannine, right? On the second day.
Right. So, one of the things that I've learned in Bible study is the importance of repetition. We're talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much value in coming back to a thing over and over and over, particularly when you find something like kind of confusing, or you feel like something's just at the tip of your tongue and you can't articulate it yet.
Yeah, I think I felt that way with the book of John. I have long loved the book of John because I think that somewhere in my subconscious, I caught that there is a lot of depth and meaning, and yet I couldn't quite get to put my finger on it. But now as we're going through it in this manner, this book is unfolding like a rose.
This is a good point, because I would say, venture to guess, that you have spent enough time in the book of John on your own. Mm-hmm. I know that I have spent enough time in the book of John on my own, and yet when we're coming to it with fresh eyes, as well as doing it together. There's deeper insight. And that's like a really great principle about Bible study in general is, there's tremendous value in your personal practice, but so much in the communion with other brothers and sisters in the faith.
Yeah, because things begin to illuminate. I mean, as we jump into John 5, some of the things that we noticed that I even drew attention to this morning with Justin is that, again, we have another scene with water.
Yeah.
Right.
We're seeing these themes emerge over and over and over. And this is not something that you always see if you just take one chapter at a glance and then maybe go to another book with a different chapter. You see it building up. And we're starting to see a lot of these clues and signs pile up in the book of John. One is this idea of water.
One is an idea of water. Another one is this contrast of story. So right after the first of his signs, he starts having interactions with people directly where he enters into dialogue.
Like one-on-one.
One-on-one, right? And then the intensity of what is being revealed grows.
First one is John.
In John chapter 3, you have Nicodemus, right?
Oh, I was going to say John the Baptist.
Yes, at the prologue, right? He has this interaction, right? But then when we dive into what you think is like, he has his disciples with him. He does the water to wine. It's the first of his signs. His disciples believe on him. They're the first ones that are like, Immediately after, you have Nicodemus. Mm-hmm. He doesn't understand. So,
woman at the well.
Right? Well, immediately after that, then John declares about. So there's this contrast where Nicodemus should understand, but he doesn't. John, who's never been trained and been living out in the wilderness, shouldn't understand, but he does. Who's the real religious established person, believer, unbeliever, these ideas.
Right.
Then woman at the well, right? Versus the nobleman's son.
Yep.
Who's the one that receives the word?
Is the outsider, the woman, the Samaritan.
Versus the one who should have known the word.
From his own hometown.
Right? From his own hometown. Bro, I didn't even think about that. Right? From his own hometown.
Yeah.
And then right there is where John wants to put this little thing of, this is the place where he turned water to wine.
Yeah.
And in the previous story with the woman, she had a water pot. The only other place that there's a water pot other than the story back in John 2. So it's all like wink, wink. So again, you have this contrast. Now we get to John chapter 5, and there's going to be this contrast. And again, you have the element of water, right? Mm-hmm. And we've also seen that as Jesus is journeying through, there are all these Old Testament elements that are just kind of orbiting around him.
Yeah. We also see an emphasis on word, and we'll continue to see this coming throughout the rest of the book of John. John begins, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And we see that the Word is this very powerful and potent thing. And we see all throughout the miracles of Jesus, it all tends to hinge around this idea, at least in John, of the Word. This is the methodology in which God works, is through the Word.
Yeah. So how I used to think of John 5. John 5 is the man at the pool of Bethesda, been there for 38 years. And the old way that I grew up understanding it was with the addition of verse 4. John chapter 5, verse 4. That when you look.
That's right. In the book of John, depending on which version you use, 4 is actually missing. If you caught that on your own, you'll notice it goes from verse 3, then it jumps to verse 5. There's usually like a parenthetical or an asterisk at the bottom, hinting towards this verse in verse 4.
Yeah, because the idea was that verse 4 was some sort of addition, and that it isn't in the earliest manuscripts we have, that it isn't in the earliest manuscripts. But the old way I used to have it with John chapter 5, verse 4.
Is that this angel comes down and tickles the water a little bit, and whoever gets there first is the person that gets healed.
Yes.
And we were talking about this in take 1 or take 2 or whatever it was. Like, dang, that's a really crappy God.
That's right. What was that point that you were bringing up?
It's like, man, like God.
You were like, he don't have enough juice.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Either he doesn't have enough power to heal everybody, or he does have enough power to heal everybody and only cares to heal one person. It's like, dude, that sucks.
Yeah, so he just comes down on a whim and is like, tickle, 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 water,
give him a little bit of grace.
And he over gets there fast enough.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that, right? So then in thinking that, I'm thinking to myself that, again, when God presents something, or it seems as though the move of the Spirit, however,
you got to be ready to act.
Right?
You got to be able to jump on the next opportunity. And maybe there's truth in that. In fact, there is probably truth in that you should say yes and obey God without waiting.
Yeah.
But then there's this sense of like, what happens if I didn't do that last week? Because last week, God gave me an opportunity, and I kind of dilly-dallied a little bit.
Yeah, because then the way that it's framed, it makes it seem as though your healing, your well-being is dependent on you.
Your action.
Right? Like that God has this opportunity. It's going to float right on by you, right? It's like a merry-go-round, right?
Oh, I missed it.
Oh, I missed it. I got to wait for the
next round.
Exactly. And seemingly here, this guy's been missing
getting a suitcase at the airport.
Yeah. Which is the worst if you
and you're
miss
like
it, right?
chasing it through a crowd of people.
Yes, you're that guy. So this guy has been missing this opportunity for 38 years.
Which is a long time.
And then the background, now having a little more insight, the background is that there is a myth around this water source that it's
actually even like geolocated. It's this idea of these 5 colonnades. There's this callback to this common myth back in those days. This half god, this half man, mythological creature, figure in Greek history.
Yeah. His name is Asclepius, right? And Asclepius is the patron god of healing. And you have Asclepians and Asclepions, which are housed on colonnades where people would actually come. All the sick would gather in hopes that there's this move of Asclepius that would actually heal people, right?
Right.
So some scholars have noted is that Jesus comes into a place where the general mythos and idea is that the sick would gather and that there would be a move of Asclepius, right? And that maybe you could get a healing.
Yeah.
Right? So this is this is anathema, I would think, to religious leaders, right? And here Jesus shows up and says to this man, and he uses
anathema. I have an idea, given the context of what you're saying. Like, this is something that the Jewish leaders don't like.
Oh yeah, they would completely reject this, right? They would cut this off from orthodox thinking.
So we see Jesus continually moving in this general direction of destabilizing what the Jewish leaders like
and what they expect, right?
Right, exactly. The whole thing, and it climaxes in the next couple of chapters. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, because if you think about it, again, a little background, because we're gonna for sure do a part 2, is that even if you think Nicodemus, like his first interaction with a religious leader is like, buddy,
you're a teacher.
You're a teacher?
And you don't even know.
And you don't get this?
You don't even know.
He wasn't ready. Right? Yeah. And then it's like, you want to talk to somebody who knows? Yeah. Talk to the dude in the camel hair and up in the wilderness.
That guy.
Right. So Jesus shows up and with this trajectory, and he uses a phrase that would be popularly recognized as something that Asclepius that is found in the literature about Asclepius, right?
Yeah.
And that is do you desire to be healed?
Yeah.
Right? Particularly the way that it's said in the Greek. I can't remember now. It's like higes genestai, I believe. Right? It's like, do you desire to be healed? And Jesus comes, finds this man. Do you desire to be healed? The sick man answers, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. This hit me in a fresh way, because what he's saying is that he has nobody on his side.
He has no advocate. No one cares enough about him.
He has no...
He knows that there's a distance that needs to be crossed, but he in himself is powerless to actually traverse that distance.
Exactly.
And so he needs an advocate. He needs a helper. He needs someone who's compassionate enough to look down on him and lift him up.
And lift him up, right? And here's Jesus. And then the question is, sir, I have no one, right? Jesus says to him, not even the question, he just says, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And what is powerful about that, we're running out of time, is that he commands him.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no quality of faith. There's no action that the guy needs to do in order to be healed. Just hear the word and obey.
Right? I have no one. And then there's Jesus speaking.
I am that one.
I am that one. Right? Yeah. We're going to continue this.
Woo! It's going to get better, guys.
Yeah.
Hey movers, I recently got to travel to the Logos headquarters and ended up recording several tutorials on how you and I can get more from our Bible study using Logos. To see the entire playlist of videos, visit logos.com/themove and get 10% off any Logos 8 product you want. logos.com/themove.